It's interesting that at the end of Megillas Esther, the pasuk says the following: Kimu v'kiblu haYehudim aleim va'al zar'am. The Bnei Yisrael, after the miracle of Purim, demonstrated that they fulfilled and accepted these days of Purim upon themselves. The Gemara in Megillah says something very fascinating. The Gemara says, Kimu v'kiblu sounds very similar to Naaseh v'nishma. Kimu means they fulfilled. V'kiblu means that they accepted. Says the Gemara that while Har Sinai, Kabbalah Satorah, we all know that Hashem took the mountain, Har Sinai, Kafa Aleim Har Kagigis. He placed it over the Bnei Yisrael and said, Im tikablu es haTorah mutav. If you accept the Torah, fine. If not, I drop the mountain, v'sham tehek furastem, and that's where you will be buried. So you see that Bnei Yisrael were forced to accept the Torah. Now on that alone there's a question, because we know that the Bnei Yisrael said Naaseh v'nishma, which means they accepted the Torah willingly. That was what we spoke about the past few weeks. How there was an unconditional love and an unconditional dedication to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If you remember the king with the daughter, no one was able to see her, the trusted servant accepted to marry her, sight unseen. So what is this about putting a mountain over Bnei Yisrael and forcing him to accept the Torah? But what's even more strange is that in the Megillas Esther, the Gemara says, what did the Jews accept upon themselves at the Nes of Purim? That while they were forced to accept the Torah by Har Sinai, they accepted it willingly at the time of Megillas Esther. So a number of things need to be clarified, and I have a very short amount of time to explain it to you, and I will. So remember, the two questions are simply, were they forced to accept the Torah, or did they accept it willingly? And if they were forced to accept the Torah, what is it that they then accepted willingly at the time of the Nes of Purim? So I'd like to tell you something that the Medrash says. The Medrash says that the Torah they accepted on Har Sinai willingly was Torah Shebechsav, the written Torah. The Torah that they accepted against their will was Torah Shebal Peh. And I'll explain to you what the difference is between Torah Shebechsav and Torah Shebal Peh. We'll see it very clearly soon. And that's where all of the mothers come into play. And what they accepted willingly by Megillas Esther was Torah Shebal Peh. What is that? Let's look at the Chet of the Bnei Yisrael at the Egel. You'll see something very strange. In next week's Parsha, and I was hesitant to discuss next week's Parsha simply because next week I have to speak about next week's Parsha, but we just paskin that there's no Tehillim next week, so I have to do a double Parsha. Tetzaveh and Kisisa, so I'll chaperayim. And in this next week's Parsha is where the sin of the Chet HaEgel comes. And it's directly related to this question that we're asking. It says, Vayar ha'am, and the nation saw ki bo sheish Moshe, and Moshe was delaying in coming down from Har Sinai, so they didn't know what to do. So they gathered around Aaron, and they said to Aaron, Kum aseh lanu Elohim, we need a new God that will lead us. Ki zeh Moshe ha'ish, because this man Moshe, asher ha'elanu be'eretz Mitzrayim, that took us up for Egypt, lo yadanu, we do not know, me hayalo. We don't know what happened to him. And Rabbi Yitzchak Volozhiner asks a simple question. You don't need to be an expert in Ivrit or in Lashon HaKodesh to see that this pasuk is very strange. Because if you would like to say we don't know where he is, anybody here from Eretz Yisrael? Mishodero daber Ivrit? Lo yadanu eifahu. Lo yadanu eifahu. We don't know where he is. Ma pirush lo yadanu me hayalo. We don't know what he has. That's what Bnei Yisrael is asking? So let me tell you the teretz that he says. And this is the key. And this is really the entire foundation of parenting. The difference between Torah Shebachsav and Torah Sheba'al Peh, and it's important for you to know as your children begin to learn Gemara, many of them ask, what do I need to know about Kashas and Terutzim and a Shor and a Bar and all these questions that have nothing to do with well, why am I learning all this? And I'll explain to you very clearly why we learn Gemara. Torah Shebachsav is straightforward, clear-cut. Tell me what to do and I will do it. Nothing in Torah Shebachsav can ever be changed. The words are the word of Hashem. And when Moshe Rabbeinu gave them over, Moshe Rabbeinu was not allowed to interpret the words in any which way other than Hashem speaking from his mouth. 2 words describe the words of Moshe. Zeh hadavar asher tziva Hashem. This is the word of Hashem. Exactly, nothing to be changed. Torah Sheba'al Peh is different. Torah Sheba'al Peh is where HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us 13 different tools. They're called the Shlosh Esrei Midos Sha'Torah Nidreshes Bahem. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, let's find out. Are you allowed to use a Shabbos elevator? Where is the international date line? If we had to do a heart transplant, and we needed to take the heart from one type of a person to another, where will we find in the Torah the answers to these questions? The Torah says that's what Torah Sheba'al Peh is. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the power to interpret the Torah according to very specific guidelines. And we know certain sects of Judaism, they decided their own way to how to interpret the Torah. We know that the Tzedukim couldn't believe the concept that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us the power to decide what halacha is going to be. And therefore they don't believe in Torah Sheba'al Peh. How can it be that God gave us the power to interpret the Torah? So they took Torah Sheba'al Peh. They sit Shabbos in the dark. They have cold food. That's why we have cholent. Because they learn Lo Savaru Eish. You can't have a fire. Literally, a fire may not be burning. They used to sit with tzitzis hanging on the walls. Or isem also. You should see the tzitzis. That's the way they sat. Because they didn't believe in Torah Sheba'al Peh, in the power for us to interpret. One of the biggest proofs to this is Rosh Hashanah. It says, Tiku, I love you. Tiku b'chodesh shofar, blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, ki chaykel Yisrael hu, because it's a law of Bnei Yisrael. What does that mean? Can you imagine somebody coming into a court case, a capital crime, and his date comes in court, and he marches in, and the judge says, order in the court. And the defendant says, excuse me, today I don't think it's such a good day for a court trial. I say that we push it off till tomorrow. Chutzpah? Who are you to say that But by Rosh Hashanah, the day of judgment for the world, it depends when Rosh Chodesh Tishrei is. And who makes Rosh Chodesh? In the times of the Beis HaMikdash, 2 Eidim come to Bezdin. They say they saw the new moon, and the Bezdin accepts, the court accepts their testimony and says, it's Rosh Chodesh. Well, let's say the judges decide, today shouldn't be Rosh Chodesh, it's tomorrow. There it is, Aleph Tishrei, ready to be Rosh Hashanah. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is in the courtroom, ready to judge the world. And a bunch of Dayanim get together and they say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, today's not such a good day, come back tomorrow. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Kaviyachol, accepts it and says, fine, you're going to establish the way that the Torah will be interpreted. You're going to establish your own destiny within the parameters of the guidelines that I've given you to create Torah. And that's how Rav Shlomo Zalman Auerbach paskin, and that's how the Chazon Ish paskin, and that's how Moshe Feinstein paskin, and that's how every Rav and every Dayan in Toronto, in Europe, in Eretz Yisrael, in South Africa, in New York, in Long Island, in Belgium, and I don't want to go through every single country, wherever it might be, we have the koyach. Hashem gave us the power to decide. He put the Torah into this world. At Har Sinai, the Bnei Yisrael weren't ready to accept that. Because you need to really be mature to make a decision and to paskin halacha. You need to have confidence in the power that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you in order to be able to interpret the Torah and say, this is the way to do it. They once asked, the Chazon Ish, when he paskin the halacha, it was almost like it was a nevuah. He was able to take upon himself to judge and to interpret the halacha in a way that many others would be apprehensive to do. And they once asked my Zayder Rav Yaakov Zatzal, there was always, many people want to know, maybe the Rebbe is a Navi. He has nevuah. He's a prophet. And my grandfather answered, I don't want to get involved in it, because no matter what you say, you lose, right? If you say he's a Navi, they say, oh, wow. Right? If you say he's not a Navi, Chazdish wasn't a Navi. What do you mean? He had power from Hashem. So my Zayder said, I'm not going to pass it, but I will tell you one thing. The Chazon Ish was so confident in his ability to interpret the Torah and to utilize everything that his Rebbeim had taught him. That's what Messiah is. Everything tradition says, from Rebbe to Talmud, from Moshe to Yehoshua, to the Zakenim, to the Nevi'im, Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, he was confident enough to be able to say, this is the halacha, and to stand by it. And not to be worried that maybe if the psak wouldn't come out the right way, someone will come to him and say, ooh, you paskin that way? Next board meeting, we fire the rabbi. That's it. He didn't paskin, he didn't judge, he didn't rule the way I wanted him to. So that was the problem. That was the problem. The problem was that the Bnei Yisrael saw in Moshe Rabbeinu a certain power that enabled them to become close to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You know how it is sometimes. Your child has to go to his bar mitzvah, or he has to go to school the first day, and he just can't do it. So you sit down and you speak to him or to her, and you give them a candy, or you promise them a treat, or you talk to them about how wonderful their teacher will be, and then all of a sudden they go, and they're there. It's a certain power that a mother has, or a father has, or a Rebbe has, to enable a Talmud or a child to reach great levels and great heights. We find that by Amalek, when the Jews were fighting against Amalek, right after Yetzias Mitzrayim, it says Moshe Rabbeinu would lift his hands, and Bnei Yisrael would win the war. And when he lowered his hands, they would lose. And the Mishnah asks, are Moshe Rabbeinu's hands does that make the war? Does that give victory to the Jews? And the Gemara says no. When Moshe lifted his hands up, the Bnei Yisrael were entranced. They were captivated by his leadership quality, and that aroused their love for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It enabled them to daven in a way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would listen to their tefillos. That was the Bnei Yisrael on the lower level at Har Sinai. They needed Moshe Rabbeinu to hold their hand and to tell them what to do, because they felt that they didn't have the power to do it. That's why they said, Moshe Rabbeinu's not here. How are we going to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu? How are we going to be able to move on without the Rebbe? Kizeh Moshe ha'ish, because this Moshe lo yadana, we don't know ma hayalo. What did he have? What special, magical, mystical power? What kind of koyach, ruchni, spiritual power he had that motivated us to move on? And without Moshe, we won't be able to do it. So we need a new medium. Many of us feel this way. When a parent passes away or a Rebbe passes away, we say, oh my gosh, how am I going to be able to do it? How will I be able to move on? I used to call my father, my grandfather, my mother, my grandmother, my Rebbe, my teacher, my Mora, my Rebbitzin, before I did anything. And how can I do it? That's what the Chet HaEgel, because Torah Shabbat Peh is being able to sit down and say, I'm ready to make the decision and to create the destiny of my people, of my family, of my children, of my household, of the Bnei Yisrael. When Bnei Yisrael did finally realize that was in the time of Megillas Esther. What happened at Megillas Esther? Mordechai stands up, Achashverosh is making a big party, and Mordechai says, don't go. Don't go, it's not the right thing. You shouldn't be going to that party. And the Bnei Yisrael didn't listen. 9 years later, comes along someone named Haman, and he becomes the prime minister, and there everybody's got to bow, and Mordechai won't bow. And Haman is getting mad, and Haman is raging, and Haman begins to direct all of his wrath at Mordechai, but not Mordechai alone, the entire Jewish people. And I'm sure many people are saying, Mordechai, we know that you don't want to bow, but you're getting us into big trouble. You're going to have, nope, I will not bow. I will not submit myself to this Russia. Fine. The next day, there's a decree on all of the Bnei Yisrael. The entire Jewish people will be wiped out in close to a year from now. This was in Nisan. This was 3 days before Pesach. And the next Adar was when the Jews were going to be killed. And everybody, and the entire Shushan is in mourning. That's it, the end of the Jewish people. Mordechai gets up. Now I want to ask you, between me and you, what would we say? Why is this decree happening? Because Mordechai doesn't want to bow. And why is he starting up? And why is he instigating? And we need to live it. And Mordechai stands up on the chair and he says, Rabbi, remember 9 years ago you went to that party? How would we look at it then? What would we say? What? 9 years, everything's been wonderful here. And you're telling us that that's why this is happening because 9 years ago we didn't bow? 9 years ago we went to the Suda, to the meal of Achashverosh? Mordechai says, yes. And the Bnei Yisrael gathered together, they sat down, and they had to make a decision. And there was nobody to ask. There was no Navi, there was no word of Hashem, there was no Bas Kol. And they got up and they said, we must do Teshuvah. We have to listen to Mordechai. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu looked down and said, you know something? Bnei Yisrael, you've matured. You've grown up. You've learned how to look at a situation and paskin and decide on your own what your destiny will be. Now you're ready for the Nes of Purim. Now you're ready to be saved. Now you're ready to accept Torah Shebaal Peh, where you need to make the decision. You need to decide. That's why you'll notice in the entire Megillas Esther, who's not there to hold our hand? Whose name is never mentioned? HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, you know what? I'm hiding. I'm not going to be around. You're going to have to make the decision yourself. That's the Kabbalah Satorah of Torah Shebaal Peh. That's Torah Simecha. That's what we need to do every single day. We sit with our children, with our families, and we need to decide, yes or no. I remember once an incident that happened to me personally. It happened with my mother-in-law, so sie sei gesund und stark. And it was soon after we were married, and there was something that she had decided, that she had followed through on, and you know how children are, young couples. And we felt that maybe it wasn't the right thing, and it wasn't fair for us, and why him, and why did they get it, and why didn't we get it, and how come? And my mother-in-law called us in and says, I just want you to know something. Every day I daven to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ata chonen li adam das, choneinu me'itecha. Hashem, just give me the wisdom to make the right decision. And that's what I have to do every day. But understand something. I'm the mother. And I decided. And this is the way I felt. And I'm going to have to stick to it. Because that's the way my motherly instinct decided. That's the Torah Shebaal Peh of a parent. It's the confidence to be able to say, I am going to decide the destiny of the future of my people. I remember during Sheva Brachas, we needed hangers and we were rented an apartment. So we came into the house during Sheva Brachas, Ma, we need hangers. So she says, you need hangers? There's a store on the corner, 16th Avenue. and you could buy 24 hangers for $2. She couldn't give me the hangers. But there comes a time when we need to stand on our own 2 feet and realize, Kizeh Moshe, how am I supposed to buy hangers? I don't know how to buy hangers. Not a big deal to go buy hangers. It's not so difficult to make a fried egg and to make a kugel. So the first time you forgot to cook the lakshan beforehand, next week you'll be a little smarter. This did not happen to me. It's not a personal story. It's been a personal story. But remember, that's the nace of Purim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I am giving the Torah to you. You're the one to decide the future. You're going to paskin the halacha. We have to be able to decide the fate of our families, decide our future, the legacy of who we are. We're going to give that over to our children. And I think it's important. Sometimes we really need advice. We have to call a Rebbe. We have to call a parent and say, Ma, what should I do? I'm having this situation. But I think that we could start on the small things and be able to say, you know something, I feel strongly. I get phone calls from parents about certain hashkafa things that go on in the school, and I'm amazed at the confidence that a parent has to be able to say, this is very, very important to me. This is a spiritual issue. It's a ruchniistic issue that I really feel strongly about. And sometimes I would say, nah, it's not so important. But I feel strongly that if a parent has that idea, and it's something that they would like to establish, the precedent, the atmosphere in their home, go for it, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Decide, are you going to let Haman run the show, or are you going to be able to decide, we need to pick ourselves up. We need to look back at our past and say, we need to establish a foundation for the future. As Hashem, just like as Bnei Yisrael, will makabel the Torah anew at Purim, each and every one of us in our hearts, this Yom Tov, will be able to look at our families, to look at the world, to look at everything that's going on around us, and say, this is for me, this is not for me. I need to be able to stand on my own 2 feet, so HaKadosh Baruch Hu could look at me and say, that's what I'm proud of. You've taken the title of a mother, the title of a parent, and you've brought it to a new height as a posek in your own family, together with your spouses, and together with those that you take advice from. But you'll get out there, and you will be the Rosh HaMishpacha. You will be the one that will be crowned as Esther HaMalka. You will be crowned as the one who established the Kabbalah Satira of this family, and will be Zach and Mitzvah Hashem to Nachas and big Yeshuas and Nisim Mitzvah Hashem.